Hello, I'm Allan Marks at Boyden, and I'm joined today by Markus Brokhof, Chief Operating Officer at AGL, and our mini-pod series on sustainability and renewable energy. Markus, as the Chief Operating Officer of AGL, is playing a leading role in the promotion of renewable energy in AGL, which is Australia's largest electricity and energy company. It generates 20% of the electricity within Australia, but is also working hard to reduce greenhouse emissions and minimise the environmental footprint that AGL has in Australia. Markus, good afternoon to you, and the most generous welcome to you on behalf of Boyden.
Thanks a lot, Allan. Thanks for having the opportunity to join this podcast. Yeah, as you mentioned, my name is Markus Brokhof, being responsible for integrated energy, and that's a division in AGL, which is on the one hand taking accountability for all the power plants. It is our thermal power plants, it's our gas-fired power station, our coal-fired power station, but as well our hydro fleet and the renewable energy, wind and solar, and now also our batteries. And then I'm responsible in addition for trading and originating electricity and gas, which is at the end of the day the precondition in order to run our power plants properly.
Thank you, Markus.
And from a background, I'm a mining engineer.
Yep.
And working the last 27 years in the energy industry.
Thank you. Thank you very much indeed. Markus, what are the game-changing shifts and opportunities arising across renewable energy?
Most probably what has been the pace of renewable penetration all over the world was at the beginning. There was always some economical stimulus by governments and by larger utilities, but in the meantime most of the renewable energy has received grid parity. So that means with the further decrease in technology costs, renewables are playing a major role in the energy market and can compete with conventional power generation. And most probably the new wave of penetration of batteries is following somehow the same pattern as solar and wind.
Is it region specific in any way?
No, it's not region specific. It's very much related to the stimulus packages. You can say that in Europe there was, from a design point of view, there was made a mistake because you started to do a lot of renewables in the northern states, even solar. And if you would design it properly, you would have more incentives for solar in the southern regions. But due to the fact that it's even you're part of the European Union, the stimulus was then done by each of the governments. So you have quite a lot of solar penetration in Germany, where you don't have so much solar radiation as in the southern states. But having said this, it's very much related to the regulatory framework in each of the countries. But I think the trend in general has continued all over the globe, even in China, which is now most probably the largest, has the largest increase in renewable energy worldwide, has put a clear energy policy out that they want to be more carbon friendly, and that has led to a penetration of renewables even in China. And in Australia, I think we have a very particular situation that you have a high penetration rooftop solar, which was starting somehow in the beginning in South Australia and Queensland, and now this trend is continuing, and it's also penetrating now in New South Wales and Victoria. But it's really depending on the incentives you put on renewables and on the regulatory / energy policy framework, which are in each of the countries, that has led to the penetration of renewables.
Thank you, Markus. In the current environment, what in your view are the critical pivots either for or against the development and greater usage of renewables?
I think one typical point, what we see here also in Australia, is all the transmission network constraints. Because as you can imagine, renewable is a kind of very stochastic production of generation. And if there is a lot of wind in one state, then the wind parks are producing quite a lot of energy. And due to the fact that we have constraints in the transmission network, you are forced somehow to down-regulate the renewable generation, which is not very, from an economical point, is not very valuable, because you are down-regulating very cheap energy, and which is also CO2-free. So that is something which is not seen as very beneficial for the energy system. But you know, some regulatory changes have occurred that you are starting to establish the so-called renewable energy zones, and these renewable energy zones are looking to balance the system beforehand, before you then enter the transmission. So that's a topic which on the one hand has slowed down the development, but with this renewable energy, these zones, you are somehow stimulating again the renewable market. And then I think what is also very important, we always believe as AGL, and most of the energy industry is looking at the market, at the real market. So market forces should play. And unfortunately, a lot of energy markets are full of governmental intervention, which is not very beneficial also to set the right price signals for renewable energy. And then in addition, it needs investment security and a functioning market to enable players to underwrite long-term power purchase agreement, because at the end of the day, if you are an off-taker of renewable energy, and if you subscribe to a PPA, normally the banks need this to finance new projects. But on the other hand, the off-taker needs to risk manage or to hedge the output of the power purchase agreement. And for this, you need a market. And if you don't have a market, then the risk profile is totally different. So that's clear that a market environment and a functioning market with liquidity, also in the so-called forward market, so the years to come, is very important.
Thank you. Markus, how is AGL responding to the ever-evolving sort of regulatory and consumer priorities around sustainability?
I think for being one of the largest generator in Australia, but also having a quite a heavy CO2 footprint, it was always from us of utmost importance to look at our corporate social responsibility, and we have tried to do a proper but sustainable and with the right corporate social responsibility for our people, for our employees, but also for the local communities, to do a proper transition to a more carbon-friendly generation mix. And we have invested heavily in renewables. We have also a partner in an investment fund for renewables called POA, where we have a 20% shareholdership, which is the largest renewable energy fund in Australia. And in addition, we are offering since now more than a year carbon neutral products to our customers. So every product which we are offering to our customers has a carbon neutral product. So the customer can choose what kind of product he can choose. I think that's our commitment to ESG and and part also of our social license. In addition, we have launched a climate statement in 2020 that we are aiming to have a net emission zero target by 2050. That's our clear contribution to ESG.
Thank you for that. Markus, with COVID, has there been a change of focus, either an increase or a shift in focus?
No, COVID-19 has not an influence on our ESG commitments at all. It had a clear focus a bit on our social license, when it comes to local procurement, to help local communities, to not to centralize all the procurement, but also to purchase equipment parts or to use workshops in the local area in order to help businesses which are very much affected by COVID-19, and then also having customer programs for people who are not able to serve their bills, to have payment plans, to put payment plans in place to help customers to overcome the COVID-19 situation. But when it comes to our ESG commitments, that has been not affected by COVID-19.
Okay, thank you. Last question, Markus, is what are the most significant behavioural changes that organisations and consumers alike need to implement to have an impact with renewable energy?
I think that's something where in Europe, which I very much appreciated. A lot of consumers have put a lot of emphasis, also a bit stimulated by regulation, or on the other hand by a kind of certificate regime to invest in energy efficiency. And as you are well aware, here in Australia particular, how construction is done, maybe now the newer buildings, but you could quite invest in elder dwellings, in energy efficiency measures, which helps energy savings particular, and which would be very beneficial for our climate. I think then another trend is from moving from a consumer to prosumer. So at the end of the day, you generate more energy than you can consume, and then you put the surplus energy back into the distribution network, which at the end of the day will also make sure that you need less centralized generation. So I think the buzzwords are decentralization, digitalization, and decarbonization if you as a consumer will follow particular these trends, then most probably you are taking a big step towards sustainability. And then I think what is secondly important, what is also a bit missing in Australia, is the creation of energy communities. You know, that you with your neighbor are connecting to other neighbors on the generation side or on the energy supply side, that you balance yourself before you go into the distribution grid. This is also a very good ecosystem in order to avoid overbuild of transmission grids, a bit similar to the renewable energy zones. And then I think another topic is clearly support the electrification, and on this the electrical mobility plays a very major role.
Good. Markus, thank you so much for your time today. It's enormously valuable, and we look forward to speaking to you soon. Thank you very much for taking part.
Thanks a lot. It was a pleasure.
Thank you.